Hey everybody, I'm Grady, and I'm here to talk about the Encounter, our newest offering from Source Audio. As you can see, it looks pretty similar to the Collider, and it is a similar concept with a dual delay and reverb. The Collider was our collection of our bread and butter sounds, so basic digital delay, basic analog delay, hall reverb, that sort of thing. And this pedal is a lot more experimental, a lot more ambient. It's a collection of some new engines that have never been in a pedal before, as well as older engines from Nemesis and Ventris that we have updated with some new features to make them as fun to play with as possible. So looking at the Encounter interface a little more closely, we can see it looks very, very similar to Collider. We have this knob switch down in the bottom right that allows us to change which engine, the delay engine or the reverb engine, left or the right, is being controlled by the knobs. So right now it's in the middle, which is the lock position. So turning the knobs will do nothing. Just helpful if you dial something in and you don't want it to get messed up. But we can move it to the left here, and we see this is an update from Collider. The selected engine begins to blink, and that indicates which side the knobs are controlling. So right now we're controlling the Resonant engine. And then we can do the same thing, flip back to the right, and we're now, you can see Hypersphere is blinking. And we can cycle through our reverbs. And at the beginning, we are contained to these 6 reverbs on the right side and these 6 delays on the left side. But this pedal is designed to be able to act as a dual reverb, as a dual delay, which have a variety of routing options. You can run them in series, in parallel, whatever, but you can get a lot of fun stuff if you don't just stick to delay and reverb. So the way to do that is we can switch over to the reverb side with our switch, hold down this control button in the back, and move the encoder over to the delay side. And now we have effectively unlocked the pedal, that's what we call it. And as you can see, we have 2 delay engines loaded, noise tape, and resonant. And I can really quick get a cool sound out of this that's tempo synced if I turn them both on, tap in a tempo, and then maybe switch one of them to 1/8 notes using our tempo subdivision switch in the bottom left. Okay, so now we're going to go through each of the engines available on Encounter briefly and talk about why we included them, some tips and tricks, and some interesting things about the controls. So the first one up, and I think one of the big questions that's been on people's minds since this pedal was announced, is Hypersphere. And Hypersphere is, I think, the best reverb engine that we've ever created. It was something that didn't make it in time for Ventris, and was never included on Collider, so this is the first time that it's being released out into the world, and it just sounds gorgeous. Hypersphere is an n-dimensional sphere, so we wanted to capture that sense of like just infinite expanse of sound. Okay, so the first thing I want to show you with Hypersphere is just the basic sound that loads up when you select it as your engine, just because it's really beautiful. So I'm just going to engage the reverb side here, and it sounds like this. If we bring down the feedback, we can get, and the mix a little, we can get kind of a nice basic room tone. So it's very usable. That's not exactly evoking n-dimensional sphere, but if you crank that feedback up and then you start moving the tone up as well, once you get to about 2 o'clock, it starts adding this like really interesting distortion that's kind of sci-fi sounding, almost synth-like at high levels, which is kind of cool. So that sounds like this. And if you really want to take it all the way to space, we have a phaser mix on Control 2, which does this really big slow sweep and just sounds magical. Shimmers is the next algorithm around the encoder that we'll look at. And notice that it's Shimmers, not Shimmer, as was the engine on the Collider, because this is brand new. It's never been in a Source Audio pedal before, and it is a reverb that has not one but two pitch-shifted voices that you can play with, which gives you really like three voices to play with if you include that regular reverb sound, which you can blend in on the top of the pedal. Okay, so again, here's the dry. And then if we just engage the basic shimmer sound, what loads up as the default, we get this. So you can hear there's an octave down and an octave up playing, which can lead to just some really nice harmonies. Then we have other options on Control 1. So Control 1 is your sort of voice selector. One of my favorites actually is what's essentially unison, but each voice is detuned by about 10 cents, and you just get this really nice big sounding reverb. And I think, honestly, the best thing to pair it with is the classic, if you're doing praise and worship music or something like that, is with the swell. So I have the swell set up on the left side, running dual reverb, so the swell into the shimmers, and that gives you, that classic sound. Our next reverb engine is the TremVerb, and this is another one that's all new, never before seen on a Source Audio pedal. We did have a tremolo reverb option on the Ventris. That was ModVerb, but that was very spring-based, kind of old-fashioned Western sound. This is designed to be ambient, to give your reverb sound, extra movement. And so the reverb it's based off of, which is very similar to E-Dome, which is on the Collider and the Ventris, is really big sounding, kind of bassy, and the tremolo is originally placed on the wet signal by default, just to give it some movement back and forth, of course in stereo if you're playing that way. And on the front of the pedal you have access to that tremolo's depth and speed control. Just a quick listen to the TremVerb. This is basically the default sound. So you can hear it's only affecting the wet signal by the default, and again that can be changed in Neuro, but we like the way that sounded. Really can open the sound up if you stack it with some other things. And we can look at the range on that speed knob. It's fun to play with. So I increased it there all the way up to. I increased the depth as well and the speed up to max, which gets you that kind of helicopter. And if you pair that with the Shimmers algorithm, which I will switch our left side to real quick, you can get almost like this kind of Leslie organ-esque sound. Next up is our reverse reverb, which is an algorithm from the Ventris. And that's, we decided to include it on Encounter because, it's really necessary for like that kind of shoegazy ambient stuff. Certain tones require it. One, kind of special thing we've added to this is the ability to control the diffusion of the reverb. So that's, kind of how spacious it sounds, how dense it is. And that control is control 2 on the top of the pedal. And you can do a lot of cool things with it. So the first thing I want to show is just the basic sound, your classic reverse reverb tone. But then, if we go over to control 2 here, and we bring that down, all the way down, we'll get nothing but those straight delay taps. And that's a really interesting tone as well. And then if we turn off the feedback, we really just hear those taps, and you can kind of build some cool patterns. And then there's also some modulation in there too, if you just want to get some really big, reversed sounding, lush tones. Sounds big and swirly. Okay, so our next engine is the Lo-Fi Reverb engine, which is pretty similar to the one on Ventris. We've tweaked the voicing a little bit and changed the control scheme up, but it's the same idea. Instead of a lot of our other reverb engines on this pedal that are very pristine, very clean sounding, for those big ambient tones, this one can get clean and big sounding, but also really mangle your signal. In a lot of different ways. We have distortion, bit crushing, as well as this random modulation sound that is very similar to like tape wow and flutter, but on a reverb. All right, so let's hear how the Lo-Fi engine sounds. This is just what it loads up with. So as you can see, it sounds a little distorted. It's got some of that tape warbly thing going on, but I'll show you the range of the knobs and we can really take it to some pretty lo-fi places. So if we turn the distortion all the way off, it sounds kind of like this. You can turn the modulation all the way up. You get this nice clean kind of sound, but very warbly. And then you can go totally in the other direction, turn the modulation off, turn the drive all the way up, and then we can actually turn the feedback down to get rid of a lot of the sort of reverb feel and the mix way up. And now you basically just have a straight distortion, which is really fun. And it stacks pretty nicely with other gain if I add some gain from the artifact. And then we can bring that feedback back up a little bit, and we just have this, and we'll add some more modulation back in just for fun. And we have this really big, really distorted reverb. Okay, our next reverb algorithm is the Swell engine. And we've already heard the Swell engine today. I was playing it into Shimmers earlier. but we want to talk about it a little more because there's a lot of interesting things that you can do with it. And yes, Swell is available on Collider, but we decided to include it on this because we just felt like you really need the ability to add those swells to other reverbs to get to certain ambient places. And we've also expanded the sort of dynamic capabilities of Swell from what's on Collider. And it can do a lot more than just swell now. It can also duck your reverb. It can sort of bloom somewhere in between, you know, while you're playing, and then it expands once the playing ends. You can control your reverb tail with the dynamics. So a lot of interesting things like that. And the top level controls on the pedal control the envelope. But if you hook it up to Neuro, you can get into, you know, ducking territory and things like that. So for Swell, our controls are all around shaping the envelope. And we have an envelope sensitivity control and an envelope attack control. And these are similar but different in an important way. So first I want to show you the attack control. This is just how the engine loads up right now. Sounds like this. So you can hear it swelling in a little bit, but it's not too intense. But this control 2 right here allows us to increase that attack time to something pretty drastic. So if I make it 0, it comes in almost right away. But if I increase this, let's put it to noon. You can hear it swelling that signal a little slower, and then all the way up. So you can hear it took a lot more playing for it to sort of reach the peak of its envelope. But then you can adjust that even more with the sensitivity control, which basically affects how hard you have to play in order to get the envelope to rise. So if we make it as all the way down, that means there's very little sensitivity. So like I have to play super hard to get it to even like swell a little bit. And I also have the attack all the way up, which affects that. But if I increase this, I don't have to play quite as hard to get it to swell. Okay, so that's the end of our reverb engines, and now we can look at our delays. So the first one up is noise tape, which is based on the delay section of a space echo unit. And it can go from a sort of nice clean tape sound to pretty heavily saturated with noisy wow and flutter in there. And you can, you know, kind of find your sweet spot in between. Whatever that is for you. And then in Neuro, we've expanded this from what's available on the Nemesis, because this is an engine that's on the Nemesis, to allow pitch shifting. All right, so let's look at the controls for noise tape. On control 1, we have something that we're calling tape age, which is basically a mixture of a saturation control as well as wow and flutter that has a little bit of random noise mixed in there. Pretty straightforward. If we turn tape age all the way off, you have a very clean tape sound. And then as we increase this, we get both more wow and flutter as well as saturation. Up here, it's getting pretty, you know, pretty noise tapey at this point. And then maxed out, it sounds like this. And then control 2 is wow and flutter speed, and it just adjusts the speed of the modulation. Pretty straightforward. It can get pretty fast if you crank this up. I think another thing to mention here is the tone knob, which has a special filter on it that allows it to get quite dark and kind of rumbly at the low end. So I'm just going to decrease the tone down to pretty low. Next up on the delay side is our resonant engine, which is sort of the analog Bucket Brigade style delay that's available on Encounter. On Collider, we had our engine that's just called analog. It's a little bit cleaner, a little bit more high headroom. The resonant engine, it degrades a lot faster, it's a little darker, and just has that sort of special character to it. In addition, it has 2 resonant filters on the repeats. So one on the left side, if you're playing in stereo, and one on the right side. And you can modulate these filters using the controls on the pedal for some really interesting sounds, from anything from a sort of static filter ping pong thing to crazy sweeping. So when you first load up the resonant engine, the filters are not engaged, and it sounds like this. So that, classic Bucket Brigade analog sound. But if we increase the depth knob, which is Control 1, just a little bit, it will engage those filters, but not really modulate them yet because the depth is so low. And at this point, the tone knob also controls the filter cutoff. So that might sound a little confusing, but you can hear it quite clearly when I play. So as I lower the tone knob, that cutoff frequency gets really low. And then you can hear it kind of open up as I increase the tone, until there's almost no filtering happening at all. But you don't want to be sweeping these knobs while you're playing, so that's why we have this depth control and the ability to modulate the filters. So if we increase our depth, and I'm also going to increase the feedback a little bit just so you can really hear the sweep that's happening. So let's increase the depth a good bit. I'll turn the tone down to the center point that we want, and that sounds like this. I'm going to make it a little more extreme here just for demonstration purposes. And then we can go right back to regular, no filtering, just by turning Control 1 all the way down. And then Control 2 is the speed of the modulation of the filter. And that can get pretty crazy. If we turn the depth up and we turn the speed way up, you basically have it doing an entire cycle of modulation on every repeat, which is crazy. So our next delay engine is the Drum Echo, and this is based on the classic Echo Rec sound, which is a multi-tap delay with some pattern control. And what we've done is expanded it from the Nemesis so that you still have control over some pre-selected patterns on the front of the pedal, but in Neuro, you can really build any sort of pattern you want by changing the lengths of each of those taps individually. We've also added a new control from Nemesis that we're calling sort of the wash, which is an effect that the Echo Rec has, where the pattern sort of washes out after a number of repeats. And we've made it that so that you can dial it all the way out and get a purely rhythmic repeat that maintains that pattern for as long as you want. First, let's just hear how it sounds on the load up. So as you can hear, it's that, that Echo Rec sound with the sort of galloping effect that you get as the tail continues to feed back. But first thing we'll look at is the pattern selector, which is Control 2. And this allows you to go through about 8 different patterns, although again, you can make whichever kind of pattern you might want in Neuro. But we have a few different ones in here. This one's kind of fun. You can hear a bit of modulation in there. And then we have this wash control, which, like I mentioned earlier, basically controls how much the feedback kind of comes together as the tail goes, and gives it that sort of galloping effect that you hear with the echo rec. And we wanted the ability to have that, have that classic sound, but also have just like a purely rhythmic sound. So if we dial this all the way down to 0, you won't hear that sort of galloping sort of multi-feedback that the echo rec does. It will just be the pattern. And this is especially apparent if we change the pattern to the final pattern, which is a new one that we added, which is basically triplets, so that every tap is equally spaced, and it just sounds kind of like it's just going on with the same rhythm forever. So that's what this sounds like. So our next engine is EchoVerb, and that might sound a little surprising at first, given that we're going through the delays, and this is a reverb engine from Ventris, but we felt that it really shines more as a delay algorithm, and so we've sort of reimagined it in certain ways, so it is more of a delay, and really like a Swiss Army knife of this pedal, which we'll see. So when you first load it up, it's a very clean, sort of thick-sounding digital delay. That's a really great platform for building ambient sounds off of. But then the other half of that is there's a plate reverb in there, and you can use one of the controls on the pedal to dial in just a touch of reverb to those repeats, or get really ambient with it and crank it up. And why we put this on the delay side and included it is so if you wanted, you could do things like run 2 delays, run EchoVerb with another delay, and then add just a touch of reverb. Or you could run 2 EchoVerbs and have 2 delays and 2 reverbs. Stacking those can get pretty ambient. So there's a lot of options there to integrate with the other engines on the pedal. First, let's just hear what it sounds like as usual when it loads up, which is just going to be a straight delay sound, very pristine, a good starting point. You can hear it's just a single tap delay. It doesn't ping pong back and forth, but it is very, very clean. So next what we'll do is EchoVerb. We'll bring in the reverb part, which is Control 2. And that will control both the reverb amount and the length of time. So just as you increase it, you basically get more and longer reverb. So we'll add just a touch to start. So you can just hear the repeats are a little diffused there, but if we increase this up a little bit more, you can hear that nice plate reverb ringing out. But now, of course, you can also run this engine as just a plate reverb, and the way to do that would just be to turn the delay time all the way down, and also the feedback down, because that only applies to the delay signal. So that sounds like this. And with the feedback down, the delay knob basically acts like a pre-delay for the reverb, like on the reverb engines. So you could add a little bit of pre-delay. Might be useful. Now the next thing, let's hear them all together. So if we increase the delay back up, we increase the feedback some, we leave the reverb where it is, and we get this nice, pretty ambient tone. Now Control 1 allows us to add in some modulation. So we'll add in just a little bit of modulation to start. And one of my favorite sounds on this pedal is if you turn the delay time all the way down, the modulation up a decent amount, and the feedback up a little bit, because that increases the sort of modulated effect, and the reverb up, you get this just beautiful chorused reverb. Okay, so our next sound is called Kaleidoscope, which is another all-new sound from Source Audio. Although you might say it is the offspring of the Offspring engine on Ventris. Because it is similar to EchoVerb, we've sort of reimagined a Ventris reverb algorithm for a delay sound on Encounter. And Kaleidoscope is this really, it's honestly a hard to describe sound, but it's almost as if your sound is like sliced up and cascades through these through the frequency spectrum, almost eliciting a kind of harp feeling or kind of sparkly sound. We'll hear it in a sec, but it's hard to describe, but very cool. And some things we've done to make it a little more delay-like is we've added a control on the surface of the pedal for diffusion, similar to the reverse engine, that lets you at 0 go to basically a single tap delay sound, and as you increase it, you get more of those sort of splits, those cascades. Okay, so first things first, let's just hear how this sounds. So it's very unique. Honestly, it is a little bit tough to put into words. But let's look at how the controls work, especially that diffusion control, which is really interesting. And when that loads up, it starts out somewhere around here, around 2/3. But let's put it down to 0 so you can just hear that single tap sound that I was talking about. So pretty straightforward delay. You can tap in a tempo as you would normally. And then as we cycle through this diffusion, you start hearing more of that kind of sparkle effect, or whatever you want to call it. And in max diffusion, you get that sort of classic Offspring sound that's almost more like a reverb than a delay. But you have the option to cycle through that and find whichever happy medium works for you. And Control 1 here is going to affect the amount of modulation. So we can turn that off. Hear how that sounds. I like it with just a little bit. And you can do a lot of really interesting things with this engine, especially in Neuro. There's a lot of parameters you can tweak, and there's a huge range of sounds available. But one thing I want to show you in specific is just how nice this sounds when paired with another delay. Because it's available on here in this dual unit instead of just on the Nemesis for the first time, or the Ventris, for the first time you can sync it with another delay and get some really interesting sounds. So let's try it with drum echo. So what I'm going to do here is just flip the switch over to the reverb side, which I believe is already unlocked. So I can switch that to, let's do drum echo. Then I will tap in a delay time, and let's see what we get. So last but not least, we have Helix, which is a pitch-shifted delay engine from the Nemesis that has been tweaked to not just have its own unique sort of Helix sound, which it does, it's this kind of multi-tap, fluttery, reversed thing, but also just allow you to kind of do whatever you want with pitch-shifted sounds just from the face of the pedal. So let's listen to the default sound, which is going to be pitched 1 octave up, and the repeats are reversed. So it's a very unique sound. So you can hear it's compounding the pitch shift. So every repeat, it goes up by another octave. And this becomes really apparent if you make the delay time like kind of ridiculously long. You can hear those octave ups. So you can hear it getting higher over time. But let's say we don't want that. Let's say we want something more akin to the shifter engine on our Nemesis pedal, which was, it would just hold a single octave if you wanted something like that. And that's totally doable on this engine because of the way that we've arranged the controls. So control 2 here is essentially a mode selector. And the way it loads up at 0 is the repeats are reversed, like we're hearing now, and they compound on each other. So it will continue whatever interval you have selected, whether that's an octave or a fifth or whatever, it will continue to increase that or decrease that as it repeats. But we can change that to make it hold instead of compounding. So the next mode, which is around here, this knob is split into 4 segments, is reverse, but it will hold that octave up. So that sounds like this. So you can hear, even if we make the feedback really long, that is not changing that octave. But it is still in reverse, which is pretty clear if we do something like this. But now our next mode is going to be going forward. So the repeats are no longer reversed. So we'll go one more further. That's about here. And now it's going to hold that octave, but you won't get that reverse effect. And this mode makes for a really great, just single pitch shifter effect, polyphonic, if you turn the delay time all the way down and the feedback all the way down. You just get. And if you run 2 helixes in parallel with each other, you could set one to 1 octave up, 1 octave down, or something like that, and actually have dual pitch shifting going on in full polyphonic. And now we can go through our control 1, which changes the pitch shift. So by default, it's all the way up, which is plus 1 octave. We have some other options in there, like a fifth, which is right here. And then we also have a unison option. So if you're if we go back to that reverse mode, but where it holds, and we set it to unison, you get a really nice, just straight reverse delay. Oh, sorry, let me turn the delay time and the feedback back up. So there's no pitch shifting happening, it's just a reverse delay. And then, of course, we can also octave down. Which to me almost sounds like in reverse, like a cello or a stand-up bass. Okay, everybody, so that's the Encounter. Thank you so much for watching. And I just want to mention that we have a software platform that I mentioned a couple times in the video called Neuro 3, and that is completely free and available to anyone to download on our website on Windows, Mac, iOS, Android, whatever platform is best for you. And you can actually get in there now with something called Soundcheck and listen to all the presets that people have created for Encounter, the presets that we've made for Encounter, and you can go into the editor and tweak parameters yourself, even start to build presets without even owning the pedal. So we hope you all have fun playing with Encounter, and we'll see you next time.